Hey everybody, we're back here with Amanda Painter. Amanda is a very old friend of mine. As an actress, she had worked in a project we work on probably about 15 years ago, give or take a few years. But since then, Amanda's been on our show several times doing charts, kind of astrology charts, mostly for kind of big picture, but you do charts all the time for people. For the people who haven't seen you before, can you tell them a little bit about kind of what you do and that side of things?
Yeah, so on like social media, my website, I often give like a little sort of astro weather report or like a little prompt if something's going on that day, asking people to sort of like think about this or notice this. But then I do one-on-one consultations with people doing astrology, looking at what's happening for them currently in terms of interacting between their birth chart and the current astro weather. And also do some like soul work healing sessions that are not astrological, but they can be combined. So
yeah. And so do you find that right now, does it seem as turbulent as we feel like it is out there in a day-to-day? Does it seem like that reflects that in anything going on? Or?
I mean, we've had some big stuff happening for sure.
Okay.
I mean, we have some major slow-moving planets changing sign this year. Some of that's already in the works, some of that's coming up. We've had some stuff interacting with like the United States birth chart, like the birth chart for the country, which is having to do with Pluto, which is all about big change and disruption and power. And we're seeing that happen in a really big, dramatic, and pretty unsettling way, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And then kind of on the more kind of micro level, more personal level, we've had things like eclipses and some retrogrades that can have the sensation of kind of churning things up a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, so to give a little context, like what we just came through just recently, we had the Aries equinox, the spring equinox on the 21st. That's when the sun enters Aries. It's our first day of spring, equal light and day. Day and night is what I'm trying to say. And on either side of that, we had a pair of eclipses. So on the 14th of March, we had a full moon across the signs Virgo and Pisces that opened up the eclipse window. And then on March 29th, this past Sunday, we had the Aries new moon and a solar eclipse, and that kind of closed the eclipse window. But in between and moving forward can be times when things shift in people's lives, especially if those eclipses interact with their personal charts very directly. You might notice dramatic changes or interesting opportunities and synchronicity or new patterns. So I usually recommend around eclipses for people to try and focus on letting go what feels like it's ready to be shed, and then setting your sights on what you really want to move toward. Just kind of set those energetic ripples happening in your life, kind of get yourself oriented with the current so you're not fighting it.
Well, can I ask a question for the people out there who wouldn't know, as much? Because when you talk about the moon a lot, it's fair to say the moon represents emotions quite a bit. It's also kind of the maternal sign. And so will a lot of those kind of fluctuations of the moons and things, that seems to be a lot of kind of the deeper emotional changes or different things. Is that fair to say with a lot of those?
I mean, it has a relationship to that for sure. I mean, I think the moon is the fastest moving thing in our solar system. It changes sign about every 2.5 days or so. So people who are sensitive to that can sometimes notice the different feel, the different tone when it shifts signs. Some people are completely oblivious. That's totally okay.
Yeah, like the slowest moving planets are a lot of times kind of the icy planets in a sense.
They're pretty far out in the solar system.
Pretty far out. They have less influence on a day-to-day, but with something like the moon, because it's always changing, there's, representative to the tides and how all these things, cycles, female cycles.
All of it.
It's very kind of wild when you think about it, that a lot of people don't realize how much a lot of these things are synced up. I mean, and even within, because I know you're going to get into a lot of the specifics, but do you find that even with the seasons, I mean, the seasons seem to be so specific. The rain comes and it waters all of the plants, that then they bloom, that then it all seems to really fit together well.
Well, and it's good to remember that our experience of the seasons is specific to the Northern Hemisphere and where we are. The seasons are kind of opposite in the southern half of the globe, but the zodiac signs stay the same. So there are different ways of relating to the zodiac signs, and they don't necessarily relate to the same seasonal shifts in the same experience. But yeah, for us here in Maine, we just entered spring. Things are starting to grow. We're getting a little more water. The spring peepers have started peeping at the pond by my house, which is always a wonderful sign of spring here in Maine. So yeah, I mean, the seasons that's how we mark the beginning of the zodiac, is like the sun enters Aries at the moment when it reaches that point of equal day and night. Is called the vernal point, or the sidereal vernal point, I think, which is just that point when the earth is related to the sun in that particular way. And for us, that's when we start counting Aries, beginning through the zodiac.
Yeah, and it seems strange and geocentric in a sense, but it does really seem to fit that part of America and Europe to where it does fit along those times.
Yeah,
but
because our astrology started like with the Babylonians or something even older, and the Greeks. So it was that northern hemisphere Mediterranean area where this really started to take root as far as the astrology that we work with.
And all of the different zodiac signs up in the stars. And,
and the constellations have shifted from our view because of just kind of the natural shifts in the Earth over the centuries and our orbit around the sun. But we still count the beginning of the sign Aries in astrology from that moment when the sun and the Earth are at that point of
and also in
day.
kind of pop culture and things, isn't there a lot of celebrations that they used to have during each of the equinoxes? I mean, Halloween seems to kind of coincide with the fall equinox, I believe.
Nope, that's what's called a cross-quarter day. So the quarter days are like the equinoxes and the solstices.
Okay.
The cross-quarter days are the days that happen in the middle of each season.
Okay.
So that's where we get Halloween. In May, there's a season of pagan holiday called Beltane.
Okay.
In August, there's another pagan holiday called, I think, like Lammas or Lunasa, depending on which tradition you're getting the name from. And then in February is when we get Imbolc, again, another like pagan cross-quarter holiday. So that's how those are developed.
Interesting.
Divided up, yeah.
So this is great things you can find out more from learning from you a little bit here and there.
Yeah.
But I know you had specific things coming up. I didn't want to go too far off field.
Exactly. So like I said, we just came through the eclipse window. So it might be good to kind of check in with yourself and notice what's changed and where you're pointed right now.
Okay.
Along with that, overlapping with that, we have two important, what they call personal planets that are retrograde. One is Venus, the planet of like love and relationships, friendships, also relates very much to emotions. And Mercury, the planet of the mind, thinking, communication, short distance transit, technology it relates to. So Mercury is going to station direct on Monday, April 7th. And because of, let me back up. An astrologer friend of mine has been tracking Mercury retrogrades very carefully related to how the actual planet is moving in relation to the ecliptic. Now, the ecliptic is the kind of the imaginary plane of like the Earth's orbit around the sun.
Okay.
And how we view it from Earth.
Yeah.
So he has found that there's more volatility with Mercury when it's in the process of crossing that line. And so it's going to be doing that this time around the time that it stations direct. But it didn't do that when it stationed retrograde. So for me, like the beginning of this Mercury retrograde was not too difficult, but things have gotten a little bit funky this last week. So just a shout out to people to take a little bit extra patience in this next week, even after Mercury stations direct, because it still might be a little bit crunchy in terms of communication, your thinking, what you remember or forget, getting places. Like it just took me like 4 tries to get out of the house to come here tonight because I kept forgetting things.
Okay.
So just little things like that to bring a little bit extra patience to your day-to-day processes and your interactions, because even though Mercury is going to be stationing direct on Monday, it still looks like it might be a little feisty.
So for the layman, when it does station direct, which will be on Monday, you said.
Yep.
Now, what will be more beneficial? Because you're saying now you could feel a little confused. You could feel a little flustered. But when it stations, you feel that it'll get a little less? Or
well, what
more?
I'm saying is that usually things settle down a little bit quicker than they might.
Okay.
That they might need several extra days after Monday. It could still feel a little bit...
And that's the kind of the ripple effect of what's going on now.
Yeah, it just relates to kind of like how Mercury is moving and what it symbolizes in terms of, the steadiness or unsteadiness of our mental processes.
And you'd also talked about Venus. So what is there anything going on with that? Because Venus is the love planet. I find it to be, because I've studied zodiac for a while, that's, not necessarily just, although it's great for like relationships. Matching Venuses can be really good, or those types of things. But it also is kind of what you're passionate about, I think. Like,
Sure.
It can be a lot of what your artistic temperament is. Like a Venus in Taurus or a Venus in Libra, they might have a lot of passion towards arts because those are artistic signs, or, the list goes on and on. Or Capricorn's like business. So you might have Venus in Capricorn, you might really enjoy business. So what's going on with Venus now that could be interesting to people?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, Venus is also retrograde right now. It's stationed retrograde on, I think, March 1st.
Okay.
So it's been retrograde for just over a month now. And it's moved, just like Mercury did, it's moved backwards from Aries back into Pisces.
Okay.
And for Venus retrograde, some of the things to watch for can be maybe reviewing or thinking about like old relationships. Sometimes people's past partners get in contact with them out of the blue.
Yeah, okay.
If it's in a personally like sensitive place for you. I think questions about friendships and values and relationships maybe have been coming up. And because both Mercury and Venus stationed retrograde very, very close, almost exactly close to the second eclipse that we had on Saturday.
Yeah, Saturday, yeah.
They were right in that same degree. So I feel like there's some sort of message that's trying to come through. So you might kind of like think back to March 1st, March 14th, March 30th, 29th, and just sort of like start, if you can, like notice what was coming up for you, and that there might be some sort of message, something to kind of like be reconsidering or updating for yourself.
So when a planet is, again, for the folks who don't know, when a planet is in retrograde, is that necessarily a good thing, a bad thing? What is it exactly?
It's a different thing.
Different thing,
yeah. I try to call it good or bad. And planets don't actually shift direction, right? Like they're always orbiting the sun in the same direction, but it's an optical illusion from our vantage point here on Earth that it looks like the planet in the sky starts to like zigzag backwards a little bit. And if you go online and search for like Venus retrograde pattern, it makes this beautiful like loopy star shape, like over the course of several years, just the way it kind of loops around from our perspective. So it's just, I interpret it as a good time for reviewing, restructuring, remembering, reconsidering, noticing what themes from the past are coming up now, or how they're impacting you. It's just come more of a learning opportunity, really. And if things are going wonky and feel like they're getting really complicated or tricky or glitchy, usually it's good to take that as a sign to like step back a few paces, take a breath, and look at what's the message behind or beneath the discomfort and the things going wrong. Because it's easy to say, oh, I'm having a terrible day, everything's going wrong, damn that Mercury retrograde. But it might be an opportunity to say, oh, wow, you know what? I actually wasn't focused on what I was doing, and that's why that mistake happened. Or, oh, I didn't pay attention to the fact that my gas gauge was getting low. That's why I ran out of gas on the highway. It's not Mercury's fault. It's just that a representation of maybe some sort of mental disarray or distraction of not being totally present. I think those are really good things to keep in mind when things get a little squirrely.
And like what's coming up this summer? I know it looks like you have spring and summer a little bit, kind of.
A little bit. I was going to kind of focus a little bit on actually this weekend, because right now the moon is in Cancer.
Okay.
And that's the sign that the moon rules. You know, like you mentioned the tides earlier. Cancer is very much about cycles and flow and emotions. And it's a very maternal sign, taking care of people, domestic spaces, domestic tasks. Like I said, emotional. And it's going to be in contact with Mars and Venus and Mercury and Saturn, all in Pisces. So there's a lot of like watery flow there. And Mars has been spending a lot of time in Cancer this year and last year because of a retrograde that it made. So I think it could be helpful if people are feeling a little bit emotional about things. Give yourself a little bit of space to really clock in and check what that's about. Like, is it about some sort of need or desire that hasn't been met or something frustrating? Is it about something to do with friends or a love relationship or feeling lonely? Is it about how you're thinking or emotions running away with your thought processes or getting stuck in a thought loop and having your emotions get swirly around it? Like just kind of like taking care of yourself, so that you can really practice whatever kind of like emotional mastery tools you have, like whatever resources you have to check in with your emotions, to notice them instead of get sucked into them. It doesn't mean it's a bad thing to have the moon in Cancer. It can be a very like comforting time. It can be a great time to clean your house. Like sometimes I get very motivated to clean my house when the moon's in Cancer. But there's just like a lot of watery emotional flow, I think, this weekend. And with the retrogrades and the stationing direct and some other stuff that's been happening, I think it's a great time to kind of like be a little extra gentle with yourself, because give yourself a little bit of space, give other people space. If they seem like they're a little reactive or emotional, or you can't quite figure out, they seem to be talking sideways and you don't understand the point they're trying to make, just like to give that a little presence and patience.
And you're saying that's the moon is in Cancer, and it's this. Now, how many days? Often the moon is in one sign for maybe up to 3 days. It seems like
about 2.5.
2.5, 3 days.
2.5,
So it'll be in Cancer coming up shortly, and then will it be in Leo after that, or
so it's in right around mid-Cancer right now, and I forget when it enters Leo exactly, but that will probably be either late Saturday or like Sunday morning, or exactly.
So I always find Leo is you find more people out and about.
Leo, a much more social sign.
Sign, exactly. Cancer is a very good sign for catching back up with your family. Bring your mother, see how she's doing. Right? It's a very mom-oriented sign. So, and then what else was going on too? I know there was a few.
I didn't want to look too far ahead, because I know it can be a little bit like
because you can come back,
overload.
Right?
I can come back. Yeah,
exactly.
I will just mention that with the Libra full moon, so that will be in another week or so, just over a week. So April 12th, we'll have a full moon in Libra.
Okay.
So that'll be the first full moon since that last eclipse we had. It's the counterpart, Aries new moon, Libra full moon. The sun will still be in Aries, the moon will be in Libra, making that opposition.
Right.
So that I think will be a time, for one thing, to really notice what's coming to a peak that might relate to what happened last weekend. If there are things you really want to be moving forward with, like use that energy to move it forward in a balanced way, right? Libra's about balance, it's about relationships. So it's not about pushing ahead and stomping on people. It's about like really seeing who you can collaborate with to move your projects forward and bring them forward. And also, like I said, noticing what's coming to a peak, noticing what may be coming to a stalemate. Does it need a little wiggle, a little nudge to kind of get it moving?
Right.
That same day, Venus will be stationing direct in Pisces. So that could be like a moment when sort of something kind of falls into place a little bit more emotionally with your relationships. The other thing I want to notice about Mercury stationing direct on Monday, on the 7th, is it's great to really pay attention for any information that comes to you that you did not know you had been missing. I've had that experience personally. An astrology friend of mine used to always caution about this, that there can be a moment of sort of like the truth coming out finally, and you might find something out that you didn't even realize you didn't know and needed to know. It can be really key information. So just listening and paying attention for like that thing that goes, wow, I need to know that. I'm so glad I didn't hit send on this email until that information came in, or whatever it is.
Well, and the sun will be in opposition to the moon when it's in Libra and Aries. Because they're opposing.
Right.
Do you find that's a good thing, bad thing? Because I always had heard that means it's any opposition, it is an opportunity for learning.
Any astrology is opportunity for learning, but oppositions especially can sometimes manifest as like interpersonal things, right? If you think about like you're sitting over there, I'm sitting over here, we're having a conversation, like that's the kind of a basic template for any opposition, especially a full moon, is like, who's the person I'm interacting with? Like, who's kind of driving the story? Who's receiving the story? Is there a confrontation, or is it more like a dance? Like you're kind of like negotiating back and forth to move together. Things like that.
Well, so would you be willing to come back and tell us more when we get to that next time?
Absolutely. Keep me in mind. We'll come back. We'll chat more astrology.
And what's the best way to find you online so they can look you up?
Yeah, you can either find me on Facebook Messenger. My name's Amanda Painter. And you can find me on my website, which is Amanda-painter.com. So there's a little dash between my first and last names, but it's Amanda-painter.com.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Amanda.
Thank you, Luigi, for having me back.
We'll be right back with a little bit more. Thanks.